Russia has secured another huge economic deal by bringing together some of its neighbours to create the largest common market on post-Soviet territory. It's hoped the new union with Belarus and Kazakhstan will compete with the economic powerhouses of the EU and the United States. RT's Katie Pilbeam has been following the talks.
The Russian president said the signed agreement has landmark, historic importance, amongst other things. Now, the ex-Soviet neighbours will now enjoy the free movement of goods, capital and services, as well as the free movement of people, 170 million people in total. And trade is set to accelerate in industries such as energy, industry, agriculture and transport. Now, I spoke to David Gray from PwC for his reaction to this deal.
I'm very positive about the prospects for Russia and for the other members of the pact as well. I think if you look at the EU, for example, I think the reduction in trade barriers within the EU had a significant impact in terms of making it easier to do business, which does encourage investment. And I'm looking forward to similar results in terms of the Eurasia deal.
Now, over the last 3 years, trade within the customs union has increased by nearly 50%. And the group is set to get even bigger, with Armenia and Kyrgyzstan expected to join the union later on in the year. Geographically, where these countries sit and how close they are, well, it makes economic sense for them to do business together. Now, this arrangement comes the same month that Russia's trade with China has accelerated to a historic level. Obviously, in Shanghai, we had the $400 billion gas deal signed. And the president, well, he spoke of further future deals as well. He mentioned a second gas pipeline to China too. So, opening new doors with the East and sealing traditional ties with ex-Soviet states.
Let's discuss this deal further now with Patrick Young, who's an expert in global financial markets. Patrick, just how big a deal is this then?
This is a very, very interesting deal. It's one huge step, part of the pivot to the east that Russia's been behind in the course of recent weeks we've really seen come together. Think about it this way. I mean, amongst these three countries alone, in the customs union they've had over the last few years, they've increased their trade between themselves by the equivalent amount of the entirety of Russia's trade with the United States of America. It's a big deal. It has multiple possible impacts. It's some possibility for every business, small and large, whether you're sitting in Minsk, whether you're in Almaty, or no matter where you are in Russia, to profit from the opportunity of customs union. This is very, very exciting. A Eurasian Economic Union is a new power trading bloc. It's somewhere that has got many, many resources, a huge number of people. I mean, we're talking about, what, 170 million people, 1.5% of the world's population. They're covering, though, 15% of the world's land, 20% of the world's gas resources, 15% of the world's oil resources, and a great deal of industry and also agriculture.
But of course, Europe is, what, the biggest trading partner with Russia at the moment. Should it be worried?
I think Europe has to start looking at things from a competitive, sensible perspective. Let's face it, Europe was never going to be the only union in the world, just in the same way that NAFTA in America was never going to be the only trade agreement there. The whole situation is, I think, one where Europe needs to be chastened. They need to understand the idea that just because you happen to be on the eastern fringes of the European Union, it doesn't automatically mean that you're going to try and fight your way into the European Union as currently is. Why not go with something like this Eurasian Union, where you've got effectively all the benefits of the first stage of the European Economic Community, i.e. free trade, but you don't have to worry about the silly regulation, the plutocratic red tape, all of those sorts of problems, which of course have plunged the European community into crisis through their daft and failing Euro project.
Patrick, of course, as you mentioned earlier, this is a massive shift of Russia towards the east. You mentioned the US earlier. What impact will this have on the US economy?
This is a huge wake-up call. It's part 2 or part 3 of the wake-up call for the US over the course of the last few weeks. Obviously, the gas pipeline deal, I mean, that was something. The whole Pride of Siberia project is absolutely fascinating. Biggest construction project in the world. Huge $400 million deal. The point about this where America needs to get worried is, A, America needs to realize that just because it's the world's largest economic power, it is no longer the uni power in the world in terms of economics. Russia and the rest of the world have alternatives in how they trade. And the most significant thing, and this is the very long-term trend for the USA, is the fact that all of this business, although we talk about it in shorthand and being in US dollars, none of it's going to be conducted in US dollars. People are going to find the way to trade, and it will be in rubles or other currencies. And therefore, that is a big impact, because the US dollar's reserve currency status, that's the thing whereby it's the most dominant money on the earth, ultimately is under threat. As soon as the US dollar's threat, the hegemony of the US economic project is going to find itself in problems once it's threatened. This is a big, big pivot, and the US ignores it at its peril long term.
Patrick Young, live on RT International. Thanks for your thoughts. Great to hear from you as always.